everybody, this is Mary Jane again, and here we are with our Helen Keller book. I'm excited to read some more to you. I hope you're excited to hear. One day, teacher put an egg into Helen's hand. Hold it carefully, she spelled. Helen was puzzled. She already knew what eggs were. She had 2 every morning for breakfast. What was so different about this one? Wait and see, teacher spelled. The first thing Helen noticed was that the egg was very warm. Then it began to do very strange things. It began to quiver, to shake in her hand. Now she could hear something chirp, chipping against the inside of the eggshell. Something was alive in there, and it was trying to get out. Helen's mouth opened into a silent "oh" of wonder as the eggshell began to crack. A few minutes later, a baby chick was born in her hand. But what about things Helen could not hold in her hand? What about things that were too big or far away or that happened long ago? How could she learn about them? Helen had to trust other people to tell her about the colors she would never see and the sounds she would never hear. And what about ideas, thoughts with no shape at all? Helen remembered all her life the first thing she understood, an idea. One day, teacher asked her a very hard question. Helen tried to think of the answer. She tried as hard as she could. Teacher leaned forward. She tapped Helen's forehead. T-H-I-N-K, she spelled at the same time, and suddenly Helen knew. That's what was happening inside her head. She was thinking. Helen learned so many hard things that first summer, but she didn't know they were hard. To 7-year-old Helen Keller, it was simply a magic time, a time when the world came to life in her hand, a time to move on. As soon as Helen woke up, she knew something wonderful is going to happen today. It was a fine, crisp fall day, but Helen knew it wasn't that. Then she remembered the circus had come to Tuscumbia, and teacher was taking her today. Helen's nose began to twitch even before they got to the circus grounds. Hot sausage, meat pies, onions, lemonade, coffee, spun sugar candy. What wonderful smells were coming from there. Helen tugged on teacher's hand. Hurry, she meant. The circus people soon heard about the deaf girl and blind girl who had come to their show. They wanted to see that she had a good time, and they thought of a way. They made Helen a part of the show. She sat in the lap of a lady called the Oriental Princess and rode around the ring in a flower-covered cart. She touched the spangled dresses of the pretty dancing girls. She ran her hands over the funny-faced clowns, but best of all were the animals. After the show was over, the circus people led Helen to where the animals lived in their cages. Is she afraid of animals? One of the circus people asked. No, teacher answered. Helen likes to touch anything that moves, and the animals seemed to sense that Helen Keller was different from other boys and girls, so they were especially gentle with her. Helen patted a lion. She shook hands with the bear. She fed peanuts to an elephant and asked, why does he have such a long nose? A leopard licked her hand with his rough tongue. A man held Helen up to feel the ears of a giraffe. A snake curled itself around her arm. She played with the monkeys, and the monkeys played with her. That's not normally what we do when we go to the circus. I don't recommend that, but Helen was supervised. One monkey stole her hair ribbon. Another tried to snatch the flowers of her hat. Helen laughed so hard she almost began to choke. I don't know who had the better time. The animal keeper said later, Helen or my monkeys. So here's Helen at this circus, and she's looking at all the animals and having a good time with them. She couldn't see with her eyes, but she did with her hands, right? Then it was December. Do you know what happens this month? The teacher spelled. Helen shook her head. Christmas. But Helen's face stayed blank. She was 7 years old, but up until now, Christmas had never had any meaning for her. So everything was new. Teacher spelled out Christmas stories for Helen and the words of old songs. She taught Helen to play Christmas games. Helen helped her mother bake huge batches of Christmas cookies and candies and cakes. She made presents for everyone in the house. Finally, Christmas Eve came. Helen was so excited she could not go to sleep. You'll have to, teacher spelled, or Santa Claus won't come. So Helen closed her eyes and smiled. Santa Claus will think girl is asleep, she spelled. But finally, Helen did go to sleep, and the next thing she knew, the day was there. Merry Christmas, she spelled into teacher's hand. Wake up. Teacher yawned and rubbed her eyes. Helen Keller, she scolded. Do you know what time it is? It isn't even light out yet. But of course, that didn't matter to Helen. The dark was her familiar world. What a Christmas day that was. Helen found surprises everywhere, on the table, the chairs, under the Christmas tree downstairs. I could hardly walk, she wrote later, without stumbling over a bit of Christmas wrapped in tissue paper. When teacher handed her a live canary in a cage, Helen thought she would burst with Christmas joy. Mrs. Keller watched her daughter playing happily. There were tears in her eyes as she turned towards teacher. Miss Annie, Helen's mother said, I have thanked God every day for sending you to us, but I did not know until this morning what a blessing you have been. One spring day of 1888, teacher received an important letter. It was from Mr. Michael Anagos, the director of Perkins Institute. Annie Sullivan had studied there as a child, and there was where she had learned how to help Helen. Now Mr. Anagos invited them both to come and visit his school. Teacher frowned as she read the letter. This was probably a good idea. Helen was asking harder and harder questions every day. Some teacher could not answer. Soon Helen would need more teachers. But was Helen ready to go into the world? After all, only a year had gone by since Helen had learned there was a real world at all. Would people think she was still too different? Would they pity her too much? We'll find out some more later.